August 9th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. We have a full agenda, and in the 13 years I've been on the board, the fullest room I've ever seen, so that's pretty exciting for me. Normally you guys all watch at home, I know. So we have a public hearing for 180, 182 Turnpike Road. We have a continuation of a public hearing for 2529 Research Drive, continuation of public hearing for site plan application at 190-212 Oak Street, an update on Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street, a discussion on peer review contract procedures, and a discussion on future town meeting warrant articles, and that's about it. We have a published order here, but you'll notice everything's at 6:30 because we do have some discretion on what order we'll take up these issues, and we have a conservation hearing committee meeting tonight as well, and in order to accommodate Research Drive and, well, I guess in Turnpike Road, but we're going to do Research Drive first because that applicant needs to be over at Concom quickly. So if you could bear with us, we're going to just take up the continuation of public hearing for 2529 Research Drive. If the applicant and representatives could come up to the table and just introduce yourselves and name and title for the record.
Make sure you speak up, just so you know. Make sure you speak up tonight.
You guys hear me okay? Okay, well, how's that? Is that better? All right. So just to reiterate, we're going to go a little bit out of order in order to get this applicant over to Conservation because they have to be at that hearing tonight as well. Okay?
Great.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. I'm just going to do quick introductions here. Marshall Gould, attorney for Samuels. And with me, I have Mike Fitzpatrick, and we also have Peter Sugarides, who are both from Samuels. This is more of a report from our point of view, so I'll just go through this rapidly. The last meeting of the Planning Board, I believe, resolved the transportation and traffic issues. So I think we're all set on that. The remaining issue was the civil engineering and the peer review from Ty and Bond. And the parties have been working together, and our engineers and their engineers, I mean Ty and Bond engineers. And I think we have a letter from town engineer. Did Lisa send you that email today? Indicating that they are satisfied that the parties have come together and they are in agreement on what has to be done and what will be done. So Jim will sort of read that into the record, I'm sure. But what I would like to say is also, as a report, at the meeting, I can't remember, I think it was 2 planning board meetings ago perhaps, a working group was set up, and it included Mark, and it included John and Jim and other department heads from town. And it was to talk about mitigation issues that the town would like. And we had myself, we had Mark, we had Peter, and for a couple of the meetings, we had our engineer. And I'm pleased to say that the working group was extremely successful. We've agreed upon the fees, of course, but more importantly on the mitigation. And conceptually, we're all in agreement. I think Jim can give you a report on that, but very happy that that took place because we know that's a big issue for the town. And I think the town's very pleased with what we were able to do. But I also want to say that the process that we have gone through with Samuels, it's a big project. It's over 700,000 square feet. But we want to compliment the town, from the Board of Selectmen to the Planning Board to the Conservation Commission to all of the town department heads and their staff. It's been an extremely productive process, and we want to thank you all for that. So with that, unless the chair has anything to say that we need to answer, that's our presentation, and I think Jim has some comments to add, and you may as well, Mark.
Okay, well, why don't we go to Jim first, Jim, do you want to add any comments, and then we can turn to the board for questions?
No, Marshall did really refer to the town engineer's memo that came at the end of the day today. I'm going to reserve that till the next meeting so that the board has an opportunity to see it. I only received it at the very end of the day. Lisa will be here shortly. She was detained, but she can speak on that if she comes in before this hearing ends. If not, we'll take it up at the next meeting. I thank you for the kind words, Marshall, that we had with the work sessions with Samuels. We really appreciate Mike and Peter's cooperation with the town, with the Department of Public Works and the Planning Board, and all that have been involved in this process. It's been an excellent opportunity to work on a project of this size with a company that's been this cooperative to work with. And the major focus of that work session was discussion of mitigation for the sewer system repairs in the general vicinity of the project and throughout that district of town. We'll have more information on that at the next public hearing, but I just wanted the board to know that we are in agreement on the mitigation, and that will be brought up at the future public hearing. I know the applicant submitted a letter to the board requesting a continuation, and after the board has had an opportunity to throw this hearing open to the public, because it is a continued public hearing, if there are no further comments, you probably want to read that letter into the record.
Just for everyone listening, this project is replacing the old BJ's headquarters up on Research Drive. It's a pretty impressive project if you haven't followed it, but it also will have a significant impact, and I just want to thank the applicant for recognizing that impact and working with us on some mitigation to address some of the town's issues there. So hopefully you can look forward to three brand new buildings up there in a couple of years. So questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay, I'll read. We have a request for a continuance from the applicant dated August 9th to the Westborough Planning Board regarding 2529 Research Drive. To the members of the Planning Board, we are scheduled for a public hearing for a site plan review application on 2529 Research Drive on August 9th, 2022. In the event our public hearing is not completed and closed during today's meeting, on behalf of the applicant, I respectfully request that the public hearing be continued until the Planning Board meeting on August 23rd, 2022, and that's signed Marshall Gould, attorney for the applicant. Any questions? Do we have any motions on this?
Yeah, there's a motion here. I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application of 25-29 Research Drive to Tuesday, August 23, 2022 at 6:30, as requested by the applicant.
I second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of continuance? That's 5-0 in favor. Jim, are we moving to Turnpike Road now?
Yes,
okay.
please.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for 182 Turnpike Road, site plan application. Whenever we open a public hearing, I have to read the legal notice into the record that was published in the Telegram, so bear with me as I read this. You probably got a version of this in the mail. But this is a legal notice of the town of Westborough for site plan review hearing pursuant to the rules and regulations relative to site plan review under section 1240 of the zoning bylaws of the town of Westborough. The Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, August 9, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall on the second floor in the Forbes Municipal Building at 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, on a site plan to construct an auto dealership comprised of a single building with car storage on the top 2 floors, and auto sales and repair on the first floor, connection to municipal sewer system at 180-182 Turnpike Road, Westborough. The proposed project consists of clearing, demolition of 2 existing buildings, and construction of 1 new building, grading, drainage, lighting, paving, and other site improvements associated with the proposed development plan. Any person wishing to be heard should appear at a time and place noted above. A copy of the application and plan are available for review in the Westborough Planning Board offices at 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, and the Town Clerk's office at 34 West Main Street, Westborough, Massachusetts, during regular business hours. That was published in the Telegram and Gazette on July 12th and July 19th. With that, we will turn to the applicant for an introduction, and then we'll have a board discussion, and then we'll turn to the public for any questions.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Mark.
Chairman. With me tonight, I have, on behalf of the applicant, I introduced her last time as Ashley Sino. Due to marriage, her name is now Ashley Pegram. It's P-E-G-R-A-M. Kristen, if that helps, and I have a card if you want it, okay? And with me also, we have Randy Waterman and Jerry Hadja, both from WDA Design Group. And we're here to talk, obviously, about the property at 180 to 182 Turnpike Road. This has been presented numerous times, and it's been the subject of numerous pre-filing meetings and a couple of post-filing meetings with town staff. I'm going to call on Randy to please give the presentation tonight, and Ashley and I are both here for questions, as well as Randy, if you have any.
Good evening. So essentially we have two different building lots on Route 9, and since most of the existing conditions of what's out there today.
Randy, can I get you to just move the
sorry.
microphone?
Yep.
Thanks.
So we're talking about two different building sites on Route 9. The one that you see on the plan above you on the west side of the property, that is a 2-acre site. It's got a 2-story office building on it, and it's 21,000 square feet in area, and there are 80 parking spaces. That building on the west left side of the plan is still on septic system and has an irrigation well on the property. It might be used for water. We're not totally sure yet, but there is definitely still a septic system. That building on the left is not connected to sewer. The building on the right is number 180, and that building is about 30,000 square feet, 2-story office building, and that building is currently connected to town sewer and water. And that site is a total of 7.2 acres, and part of the reason that it's that large, you can see the strip of land behind the property, and that land used to be part of the Boston-Worcester Railway, and that was transferred to the 180 owner years ago when CarMax did a land swap with them. So that neck of land that extends behind the building goes all the way out to Park Street. It's about 70 feet in wide as average, 60 to 70 feet wide, and that's the former Boston-Worcester rail line. It's about 2,000 feet in length from the building all the way over to Park Street. There's a small wetland at the rear of the property, right where Jerry's got his cursor down there. So basically what happens is the runoff from the parking area on number 180 comes down the side of the right side of the building and runs unimpeded directly into the wetland. And that wetland also contains a potential vernal pool over on the right-hand side behind CarMax. So right now, it's not a great situation. There are two infiltrative catch basins on the site and nothing else. There's no detention basins, no infiltration other than those two basins, which are filled with sand. So right now, the condition as far as water quality is not great, and it's going to a sensitive area that also includes part of the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Protected Habitat. So we plan to remedy that in the proposed condition. The abutters to the project, you can see on the right-hand side of the plan, that's the CarMax facility that was built recently. And then to the left side of the property to the west, that is the Curry Copy building. It's the large sort of metal-style blue building. And then you can see south of the railroad bed is the Walker Meadow condominium project. The project, I believe, has about a total of 50 duplex-style homes, so about 100 total units. The zoning for the property is entirely within the Highway Business District. So both of our lots and the other buildings along Route 9 are all in that area within the highway business. And then the red line that you can see on here, it's just dashed in lightly. That is the limit of the highway business zone. So you can see it passes right through many of the units on Walker Meadow. And that highway business zone is about 600 feet wide coming south of Route 9. So all of that area is highway business zone, including all of our properties. Again, both buildings and all the parking would be demolished. The buildings were built back in 83 and 85. They're about 40 years old, so they're in pretty tough shape in both cases. So generally, all the buildings and parking would be removed. The septic system will be removed physically and closed per the Board of Health regulations. So mainly just existing utilities would be left on the property. Access to the left or west building currently comes in off of Route 9, enters the site, and then people leave on that same access drive. There's no connection from 182 over to 180. And then over at 180, same situation. People come in at the top of the site, entering the site, come down into the property, and then when they leave, they go out the same direction and turn right and head back out onto Route 9. So that's the current situation. Both of those driveways are entry and exit both. They don't currently connect, although we're proposing to change that. Next rendering there, Jerry. So this is one of the proposed landscape plans as part of the project design. So the building itself, as you can see, is on the right-hand side of the east side of the property, and it pretty much is all located within what was lot 180. The surface parking is primarily on the west side of the property, and that was number 182. And the reason for this layout is generally sort of to follow those two existing access drives and be able to get in and out of the site and tie in back to Route 9 at grade. So that had a lot to do with the reason for the layout as you see it today. The building, like I say, is a total of 46,800 square feet. Above the building, there are two separate levels of parking decks, and both of those parking decks are designed as storage. So they will not be for regular parking. It'll be display spaces and potentially some employee parking up top. There is a ramp down at the southwest corner of the building, and that is how you would get up to both levels of the parking. So you would come in from Route 9, you'd enter that ramp at the back of the building, and then that would climb up and you would get out at the second level, and then you can go all the way up to the upper level. But again, both of those decks are designed to be storage for vehicles, and because their size would be slightly less than the typical size as storage units, we can't count those to meet code. So on the surface parking lots that you see here on the left side, behind the building and a little bit in front of the building, we have a total of 237 parking spaces. And the code for this size building for retail and service, it's roughly half and half, would be about 188 are required. And so we'd have 237 on the surface alone, the ones that meet the full code requirement. The property, again, is currently divided into two separate parcels. The plan is to combine these into one building lot. So we would put them together and have a total of 9.2 acres, and that way the project will still meet the 60% open space requirement. Access to the project from the west at the top of the site, car carriers, employees, service vehicles for the building, police, fire would all enter at that location. So that is not for customers. Customers would come down further to the east, and they would enter there and turn and go right into the central front parking lots and the service area. So on the westerly or the left entry drive, that is really for car carrier deliveries and employees. It's a gated access drive. You can see the gate on there. The gate is about 50 feet back from the edge of the right-of-way, and it has a keypad on it for anyone that has permission to be accessing from that side of the site. And just as it was before, we haven't changed the entry drive onto Route 9. This always has allowed right-hand turns out. We would like to keep that. The applicant would like to have that, just because a lot of the vehicles that would be on site, especially employees and others that would be parked in this large lot, they could still go out that driveway and out onto Route 9 without having to go behind the building. We know we'll talk about it in a little bit. We know the abutters at Walker Meadow have concerns about, vehicles and noise and lights, and it just seems makes sense to leave that as a right exit so that some of these people can get out of the site without having to go all the way around, and also then they don't have to potentially impact customers coming into the front of the building. The easterly or right-hand driveway coming in has always been a divided road, so vehicles would still enter on that first right-hand turn, come into the front. There are about 39 customer spaces out in the front of the building. And then if you come down that driveway, you can see there's another gate. That gate is about 180 feet off of Route 9, and so that is the second controlled access point. So customers could not come down into the gate into the back parking lot, and service vehicles will enter in that first tan block right there. And so there'd be 3 bays right there where vehicles would pull in for service. They would go into the waiting room from there, and their vehicles would pull around inside the building to the service area. So again, the access drives are preferred to leave them as they are, both entrance and exit at both locations. Both access drives, like I say, are gated, and they would be keypad controlled. The left-hand driveway, we did have a traffic assessment done for the project, and the traffic engineer did check the site distances at both locations. And at that left or westerly entrance, looking west, there is about 560 feet of clear vision heading westerly. The minimum or normal requirement on that highway at that speed is 550 feet. So it's above the minimum requirement. If you go down to the easterly one, and again, you'd be looking left up the hill since all the traffic is one way at this location. The dimension there is about 700 feet of sight distance up the hill. So again, in both cases, it meets the required distances under AASHTO and Mass Highway Department. Let's see, there is down in the bottom of the site, there is a small, in the white box over on the left, there's a small fueling area and a trash area right there. The fueling demands are still being calculated and figured out. So that is something that the fuel is only for on-site. All the vehicles that are here and stored on the site are leaving the site, driving for customers' view, not for other use, certainly not for public use. And that would be the location of the 2 fully screened dumpster locations. Just for references, the dumpster at that location is about 150 feet away from the nearest condominium unit, which is shown just at the bottom of the plan there. And all of the area between the two, most of it is all wooded. A lot of it is certainly deciduous, so in the winter it would be much less of a screen than you'd have today. I know the town has been talking a lot about having electrical vehicle charging stations, and they were already planned for this property. So currently there are a couple of locations at the front of the building on the north parking lot, and then over just left of the building on that side parking lot. So there are 2 level 3 charging stations shown on the plan, and then also there's conduit being set for an additional level 3 and 3 more level 2 in the future. So they've already planned to have that, and I know that's something that the boards have been working on to get more of that. So that is already on the plan. Landscape design in general, the area out in front of the site on Route 9, we have proposed mostly lower shrub type plantings and ground covers. That area, obviously, we want to keep open for visibility to the site from Route 9. So there's nothing tall at the front of the site. Mostly lower plantings are proposed at that location, junipers and that type of planting material. Over on the west side, we have an opportunity where there's a slope that we're cutting into there. Before you get into that wooded area, you can see that's next to Curry Copy. So that area, there's some taller single trees that are proposed in that area. In addition to the area is loamed and seeded and would be maintained all the way out to the lot line. And then as you go to the back of the site, the darker green shrub or trees that you see at that location, those our landscape architect has called out for Norway spruce. And those are actually called out already on the plan. We talked to the planning board, and at two of the informal meetings, we're told that, you know, this is obviously extremely important to work on the buffer zone to the abutters and make sure the trees behind it stay in place, but to bring in some big stock. So those are called out for 18 to 20 foot tall Norway spruce. And this doesn't really show on the site. We're just showing it as a light green, but there is quite a bit of wooded area that exists there, and we think a lot of that can be saved. But you can see on the plan, we are not proposing any work in the old right-of-way to the trolley line. All of our work stays on north of that, and so anything that happens within the trolley line, there's no disturbance really shown on this plan at all. So, you know, the placement of those trees exactly could be worked out if somebody, you know, if it helped, you know, to screen some of the abutters if something needs to slide either way. You know, there's certainly a plant list, a number of species and trees that are shown on there. So those could be, you know, organized if they get a bigger buffer to abutters if that was necessary. Over next to the wetland, you can see the wetland on this plan, and the area that's next to the wetland today is a 50-foot wide paved parking lot. So with this plan, the screening that you see in that area, what we're planning to do is push that, remove all the pavement, push the grades back closer to the parking lot, and then we have a number of different trees that are planted in that area so we can kind of mimic the natural vegetation that you have in that area. So we have bayberry that are planted in there. There's tupelo trees that are planted in there, which is a wetland plant, and there's a type 4 conservation mix on the ground. And we've actually met out there with the conservation agent to show her the planting plan. I think she liked the plan the way it's proposed, and we've actually sent that also to Natural Heritage and Endangered Species, Fish and Wildlife, and they've written a letter to us responding that they think it's a good plan, appropriate plan, and there's no further filing with them. So we've addressed that, and we are also on the Conservation Commission later tonight to present. Drainage for the whole project really runs from Route 9 down to the back to the wetland today, and like I say, it's unimpeded, not improved in any way. So what we'll be doing is we'll be picking up with a group of catch basins on both sides of the site. Everything will be piped right to the back of this larger parking lot, and right there, just under the paved surface, we'd have a storm trap underground chambers, and those will reduce the rate of runoff from the property and also increase recharge to the groundwater. And most importantly, they'll eliminate that direct discharge where water's just running off Route 9 and the site right into the wetland. And you can imagine that between, you know, gas and oil and sand and everything else is not a great situation. I don't know if anyone from the fire department is here or not, but they've had, you know, we've had several discussions with them, and the second level of the second level above ground, so the auto dealership is level 1. The first level of parking, which is level 2, that will have an automatic sprinkler system in the parking deck, and then in level 3, there'd be a standpipe system up on the very surface. So we've talked to them. That's the directive that they've given us. Hours of operation, we've talked to Ashley and their people, and we're just trying to figure out what is appropriate. And so we thought we would present what they would like to do and just see if that's something that's been typical with the town. The hours of operation they're anticipating would be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. The car carriers are anticipated to be about 4 per week, and those would be restricted from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. So just 4 of them between 7 and 7 Monday through Friday, and then 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Total of 4 carriers in a week. Trash pickup is anticipated to be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday only. So that's kind of the criteria that we're hoping to do, and if that's something that the board thinks is appropriate in this particular case. Do you want to go, Jerry, to the architectural plan that might help just? So these are the drawings that the architect has completed and has been reviewing with some members of the town, the fire and other people. let's see if we start at the, I guess, the upper left view. That's the south view. So basically that end of the building that you're looking at, the end, is you can see where the ramp goes into the building. And so that's the face that is pointing at the rail bed and at Walker Meadow, is that rear face where the ramp goes up. So again, the good design is that the ramp is pointed away or parallel to the railroad bed, so lights would be turning up the building and going up that way, and not the opposite way driving out towards Walker Meadow. So I think that's as good a design as could be done to make the ramp work with the site and the grading challenges that we had. If you go to the lower left one, Jerry, so that left end of the building, that is the front entry that you would see from Route 9. So basically, there's a central entry door right there. It'd be parking at the front. The pad that you see to the right, that's vehicle delivery. New cars would be picked up there. They'd be stored inside until people arrive, and then they'd pick them up and they would come out there on that pad area. If we go to the lower right, I guess, so that's the side that faces CarMax right now. So that bump out that you see in the building, that is the service bay. People would come in from the right-hand side, enter into the service bay, and then they would be, once the passenger are out, the employees would pull them into that next door and go inside the building to where the service bays are located. That next little bump out at the bottom, that's a quick lube area. And then right behind that, that single door at the end of the building, there's a small car wash in there only for use of the vehicles being serviced. If you go to the bottom ones, Jerry, it will, yeah. So again, this is really kind of both side views. You get a little better feeling for what the sort of the panelizing system and what's open and what's closed. And again, with the middle level garage, you generally want to try and leave that fairly open on the sides, just because you have the fumes from cars, and you want to make sure that's ventilated very well. So that middle level is a little open, and then the upper area is fairly open. But you can see the panel system. The front end is obviously dressed up. That's on the lower left. That's facing Route 9. And the one just above that is the one that's directly facing the railroad bed. We have received comments. We've received, I think we got them last Thursday, a number of comments from the town. We've read all those. I think we understand the main concerns. Many of those seem like they responded to noise and light, vehicle delivery, that type of stuff. And we obviously see quite a few members of the Walker Meadow community here tonight. We would like the opportunity to probably try and meet directly with them if that makes sense, and really, sit down and talk about what's proposed here and how we can address any concerns. I think these plans, when they were submitted, might still have light poles on the upper deck of the parking lot. And yeah, they're shown on that one there, you can see. So like on that view, they've been moved away from the railroad bed to the inside of the ramp, but there are still light poles at that location. And I know we've heard from the selectmen and the planning board as well, that, it would be good to find a different solution for lighting up there. So the applicant understands the concern. They've already started looking at that and seeing if they can figure out a better way to create enough light up there so it's still safe, but buffer the neighbors as best they can. So we expect that will change, and we'll be coming back to you with something different on the lights at least. So again, we will reach out to them and try and set up a meeting, and if it makes the most sense to even meet and walk out in the middle of the railroad bed out there and look at where you could put plants and figure out the best way to attack it. There is quite a bit of material out there that's worth saving, some good size material that's fairly high. And so we're confident that with what's there and what we're planting, I think there'll be a solid screen. I don't know if you want to talk about bike trail or any of that, or I know it'll come up. And
We know that the town is most interested in having the B-Walt Trail. We know the town is very interested in the so-called B-Walt Trail, which will be a walking and bike trail that will go all the way from the rear of CarMax As you can see here, what Randy referred to is roughly a 2,000-foot length neck that goes all the way out to Park Street. And with prior owners, there was reluctance. We are not closing the door on that. We just want to be certain that whatever is done will be adequate for both the security and the liability of the company. And we're certainly open to discussions, whether that would be in a working group or here at a group like this. But no decision has been made on that. And I think that's something we're going to have to come back and revisit, along with the lighting on the parking decks. Those are two of the issues that are not yet finalized, but we have advised our clients what the town strongly desires. And they are looking at that as well as the lighting, and we expect that we will report back on that in the future. I think that concludes our presentation. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions from the board, but also from the parties from Walker Meadow or other neighbors. And I believe somebody is also here from Penta Communications, who's at the end of that neck over at Park Street and Route 9. So we're open. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Marshall. Jim, I'd like to turn to you first for comments, questions, and then we can go to the board, and we will get to public questions as well, but hopefully a lot of those will be answered. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our initial work session that we had with the town, we were very concerned about lighting on the upper deck of the second story. And we talked about recessed lighting in the wall, the knee wall around the upper deck, and no light poles at all on the second story, because your building is over 20 feet tall, and those lights, I assume, are 15. I don't think you're going to provide me trees at 40 feet tall. So I think you need to fulfill that promise. I'm going to be very strong on that. I want the lighting recessed into the walls. It's possible. I see it on public parking lots. So I know that you can do that and remove the light poles, especially since that's not an area that you're going to be bringing customers to view cars.
Just, would you like to respond? Yes.
Can I? So I've had discussions with our lighting rep within the last 2 days about this, so we're looking into options. He is concerned that wall lights will actually be more distracting to the neighbors than other types of lights, full cutoff fixtures. So we're definitely open to looking into wall lights, but when I mentioned that to him, he said that people would be less happy with those than with some other fixtures that may be shielded, and they're all LED lights, so we can control them, dim them. There's a few options that we can do.
I'm sure you can do that, though, with the wall lighting. You can shield that as well. And I'd like to hear his reasoning for why they'd be more distracting.
Okay.
We understand that issue. We're not counting out the request. That has been passed on by both Randy and myself to the principals at the applicant's business, and they did indicate that they're going to consult with their lighting people, and that is ongoing. That's why we really can't give any kind of a final report. We did tell them that the board is not going to be happy if we're talking 20-foot light poles up there. There is one thing I want the board to consider. When you look at the size of the parking deck, there's going to be additional lighting needed other than just on the wall packs, because as you can see, there are quite a few spaces that would not be lit up by wall packs. But instead of our discussing it now, I really think it would be most productive if we move that to when we can have either the lighting person here or a report from their lighting person on what their advice is. And Randy and I both know what the board is looking for. So I'm not saying we're acting as your representative, but we are telling them what we think might sell and what we feel will not sell. So that's an ongoing process, and it might be more productive at a future meeting.
Does the dealer remove vehicles from the roof to remove snow?
This is one of our first dealerships in an area that has snow, so I don't have a great answer for that one right now, but most of that upper level will likely be employee parking, so the cars will not be there overnight. So depending on when snow removal is done, we may be able to time that with when the deck is open.
Yeah, so you're going to, those light poles present a problem for your snow removal.
And they're from Florida. They don't know from snow, Jim. But they'll learn. We'll deal with that.
Okay.
So in Florida, they make their employees park on the top deck in the sun.
Got to protect the nice new
I'm just
cars.
teasing. Go ahead. All right, Jim, go ahead.
So the town engineer, this is for the board's information, the town engineer will review the drainage with the peer reviewer. That is a primary concern. As you know, you pointed it out early on. Thank you for that. The Conservation Commission will be very interested in that because they're surrounded by area of critical environmental concern in the ACEC. So I think that the drainage will be well handled. The bike trail that you mentioned earlier, at the very least, the town will want an easement with the ability to work as outlined in our Boston to Worcester Airline Trail feasibility study. And there'll be more work on that in the future. So that is also a great concern for the community to be able to complete the bike trail.
And we did explain that it's a bike trail and a walking trail, but it is not intended for any kind of motorized vehicles. And I assume the board agrees with that. That was the agreement we had when we did CarMax. Okay.
Other than potential ambulances.
Of course, I'm talking about the residents who would be using it. We don't want to invite motorized traffic on their emergency vehicles and go anywhere they want, really.
Mm-hmm. And that's the same with our trail system in other locations. No motorized vehicles except emergency vehicle. The entrances to the site. So you're going to keep the same entrances in the same locations. The westerly driveway, I'm glad that you reported on the line of sight and the stopping distance meets AASHTO standards. That's good to know. We would also hope that you would work with us on a directional signage program for perhaps employees and deliveries only on the west side, allowing the east side entrance and exit to be for all uses. And I'd ask that the board consider their proposal for the hours of delivery as well as trash pickup. Those proposed hours are within your typical hours that you allow. The signage, I think, is going to be really important to direct deliveries and also to prevent confusion of turning drivers coming from the west. So if you want to keep the customer out of the upper driveway, the westerly driveway, you're going to need a sign there that says employees and deliveries only.
On the signage, Jim, we know that we will be dealing with the board. Would you like us also, when we get proposed signage, to deliver that to the police department as well for them to check?
Yes, that would be good. And also to the building commissioner. Our zoning bylaws allows directional signage.
Okay.
Those are my main comments at this time. Thank you.
All right, so we'll turn to the board for questions. Anybody? Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you're out, I just want to start with the deliveries. You mentioned 4 deliveries a week, and they could range between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. How long is an average delivery, and how many cars are on that?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have that answer.
Dude, I'm just trying to figure out how long does a delivery take? Is the truck idling? I just want to know if there's going to be noise being produced by the truck if we have neighbors that close.
Under an hour, but I don't know for sure, so I'd have to get back to you. They should shut the car off, offload the vehicles, they drive them to the parking spots, and then the car carrier drives away.
Okay.
It shouldn't be idling there for an extended period of time.
And then can you just show me exactly what side of the building it was on?
It'll come in that entrance that his arrow
Yep,
is there.
yep.
It'll likely stop in that open space, offload the vehicles, and then it drives around the back of the building and exits through the other exit.
Okay. All right, and then for your employee parking, you said you're going to be parking on the roof. Do you know how high the walls are on the roof? Like, are they going to be blocking the headlights of the cars? So if employees are showing up, you said your operation is 7 to 9, so say if someone shows up at 6:45, are their taillights going to be going directly? Are they going to be blocked? That's kind of my question.
As of now, no, there's just a cable rail proposed. So when a car leaves, there is the potential for you turn the car on, you'll see the tail lights as they drive out, but there won't be cars idling there. And that would be the tail end of the hours. So at that point, we're talking a handful of service techs possibly that might still be in the building. At 9 p.m., there's not going to be an extended amount of people. Maybe somebody closing a car deal that might still be in there. But we can look into that if that's a concern, taillights.
Yeah, because my concern, there's just cables there, and then on the back part of the lot, you're proposing trees, that how far are the trees going to be apart? I know they're 18 to 20 feet tall, but how far apart are the trees? You know what I mean?
How far apart are the?
With the stumps of the trees.
Oh, okay.
Because, you know what I mean? Because if you have them spread out, it's not like a full fence. I would prefer a 20-foot fence out back that would be blocking, because if you have a tree here and a tree here,
Right.
and a car is coming through, I mean, that's only, it could be, some people could have protection and other people won't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until the trees fully grow.
Right. So again, like I say, that area, the light green in the back of the site where we show 5 of the large trees, large evergreen trees, that whole area is wooded today. And it's pretty densely wooded, and we found in that area there's some, for instance, maple trees that are 30-inch in diameter. There's other large trees that are in there that are definitely worth saving. So I think what we need to do is have our landscape architect go out there and look at where those are and put these trees where they can be the most useful. And again, we're not opposed if the abutters, if we find when we're out there that moving one even to the south side, fills a gap somewhere.
Randy, can you use the mic? I can even hardly hear you.
Sorry about that. So again, yeah, this is a quantity, so to speak, and we were comfortable that what it does is a solid screen with what's there existing. But if there's a better location for some of the vegetation that we're putting in, we're happy to try and move it where it does the most good.
Yeah, based on what I'm seeing here, I would propose a light study. I would want to know kind of how the abutting property is impacted, just based on, you're saying that we can move trees around. I think we need to maybe have a study to determine what is actually needed there for buffer for light and also noise.
So more of a cross-section view of it would show you that.
Yeah, exactly. And then also what I was thinking on this also is a look back. We need to see if whatever we do propose to put in, and then we actually put it into the ground, if it actually works for the community. And so I would think we would need to do a study, like maybe a year look back, just to make sure what we're putting there actually makes sense to that community.
Could I ask a question both to the person, Peter, who just spoke, and eventually will be asking to meet with individuals or a group or a representative from Walker Meadow? How does the board feel about these tall 18-foot trees compared to a similar height fence? Does it have a preference for one or the other?
I think it's going to depend on which is the most effective to block the lights. So at this point, I don't think we can make a decision one way or another until we find out which would be most effective in that way. I mean, you can throw out a couple of 2 or 3 ideas. I know CarMax has a more of a barrier type thing behind it. You want to look at it because obviously whatever you're going to use, you want it to the most prevent the spillage of light in any way onto Walker Meadow or the residents behind. So
Wall is a more permanent
Well, as I said, I think you've got to come up with 2 or 3 different ideas about what might be the best way to deal with that particular thing.
Yeah, so I would kind of jump on this for a little bit. I would definitely want you to meet with the abutters and come up with a solution that they're comfortable with. My feeling is a wall might provide some sound protection in addition to light protection, which might be appealing. But I think also the location of that wall and the location of vegetation, if you're relying on the existing vegetation, I would like to know what type of vegetation that is, and if it's not, a maple tree is not going to provide much light screening in January. So so I just need to know that the abutters are going to be, that their privacy is going to be maintained year round. And the soundproofing would be a benefit there as well. But also the location, I'd like to see, to me, given the elevation of the site and that it goes down to the abutter, I think that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that having the screening closer to the abutter would provide them more privacy. Maybe it would benefit to look at a solution that's right along the property line as opposed to 100 feet up the hill. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, I mean, you can see on this plan that you can see the woods that are behind to the south of the rail trail, the right-of-way. So that's all wooded in there. So the vegetation can be moved wherever it makes most sense. You could move it onto their property even if.
well, that was one of my points. A lot of times we'll have a discussion about putting the vegetation on the abutter's property directly if they're amenable to that, because then they would have the ability to maintain it rather than relying upon your applicant to maintain it. The additional benefit to that is when the B-Walt, the multi-purpose trail, goes through, if the vegetation and/or fence is on the property line, that will provide the abutters some privacy and security from the B-Walt. So I think that's an added benefit if we could look at something right along the property line as opposed to up the hill.
Certainly look at that, definitely. Yeah.
Any other,
I had some-
Peter, I'm sorry, just one second.
Yeah,
Peter, you
sure.
done?
I'm good right now, go.
Okay,
Oh,
Hazel,
okay,
go
I had
ahead.
a couple of questions. All right, I just had some basic questions. How many employees are there going to be at this facility?
We will provide that information. We don't have the answer right now.
Okay,
This is going to be their first dealership up in this area. And I will also say, having represented a lot of auto dealerships in the Route 9 corridor and just off Route 9, I think that they will be pleasantly surprised with the volume of cars that can be sold from here. And most of the dealerships I know would sell enough cars that would probably be more than, I'm sorry, most of the dealerships that I know, I think, would be using more than 4 of the auto haulers a week. So I think they're basing it on what they estimate their business to be. Hyundai is not something that currently has a location around here. So if it hits, hopefully, it will be very successful. But we can't say how many employees at this time. They can estimate based on how many cars they sell or project to sell, but that may increase if their sales increase.
all right. Okay, I would like a better idea on that. Secondly, the 237 parking spaces you talked about, does that include the ones on top of the building, or is that just the ones on the ground level?
Surface.
Okay, how many parking spaces are up on top of that building?
The two parking decks together total 198 spaces.
So you've got 237 plus 198? Seems like a lot of parking spaces there.
Two decks really are designed as storage, though, not people coming in. Actually slightly smaller spaces, and so they're not designed to have cars turning. They don't have.
the ramp that goes up to those parking, is that two-way? It's a two-way ramp? So people be going up it and coming down it? All right. I'm a little concerned about that only because I've watched people move cars around auto dealerships and they jam on their brakes. There's a lot of noise often. So I think that's something that's important to think about. Now, as far as your hours of the week, you said that you are going to be open 7 a.m., I think, to 9 on Saturdays and Sundays. Will you have car deliveries at that time, car carrier deliveries during the weekend, Saturday or Sunday?
Please use the mic, guys. Please use the microphone.
Yeah, you said it's possible for the deliveries, one of them, or it's possible that they could come on the weekend.
Randy, can you just pull the mic over? Thanks.
Looking for my notes on.
I mean, you did mention, I thought, quite frankly, I am not in favor of having deliveries on the weekends. I mean, I think you're close enough to a residential area that I think there's no reason why they cannot be confined to Monday through Friday. So that might be something to think about just because of as I said, because this is so close to a residential area. Okay. A lot of dealerships are not close to residential areas, so I think you have to take special care based on the closeness of the residential developments which are near this. What else did I have?
Ashley just said that she will go back and talk to them about that, and we will give you a report on that when we come back.
Okay.
Both on the questions, how many people work there, and can they avoid weekend deliveries?
Right. I mean, I don't know a lot about car dealerships. I'm perfectly willing to say that, but I just, it seems like an awful lot of parking spaces, 198 plus 237, just seems like a lot of spaces for a car dealership. And I don't, as I said, I don't know a lot about that, but it just seems like an overkill. So I don't know, maybe someone could get me a little more information on that kind of thing.
Marshall, can you provide data on the other dealerships in town? You can't tonight, but maybe you can find out what the other dealerships have in town.
You're asking about parking spaces or deliveries?
No, parking spaces.
Spaces.
Ashley, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I was just going to say the franchises often dictate the minimum number of spaces, and in this particular case, we're actually almost right at the Hyundai required minimum for parking spaces. I believe they're at 425, so we're within 10 spaces of what we're required to have.
I mean, there's a required minimum, but I'm just looking at the excess aspect. So the question that Jim raised was the fact that maybe somebody needs to look at the other car dealerships along Route 9 in a general vicinity and see what kind of storage and parking facilities they have. As I said, this just seemed like an awful lot of parking spaces.
Hazel, I think the point she was trying to make is that in order to get a dealership from Hyundai requires the dealer to create a certain minimum number. So even though this is far in excess of what the zoning requires, the Hyundai franchise requires 325 and they have 335. So if they only had 275 spaces, they wouldn't get a Hyundai license to sell.
And
I think that's, is that my interpreting that correctly? Okay.
I can tell you I know of at least 2 or 3 dealerships. I don't want to mention their names, but I can affirm to the board that they have had enormous pressure put on them by the franchisor, by the brand, I guess you'd call it, to say if you don't have a certain number of spaces, you're at risk of having the brand pulled from you. And I know that with the grandfathering, if you think about it, there aren't that many new layouts. I think CarMax is your only real new car dealership layout. Most of the others in town are probably 30 years old or more, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry?
Other than on Otis Street, some of those, a couple of them are newer.
But I do know that a lot of the dealers are now looking actively for land. I don't know if they've approached you, Jim, but they're trying to find places to park their cars because they are being told you have to have this many cars and they have to be within a certain distance so that you can bring your customers over there to look at them. And it's creating quite a hardship for a lot of places.
Is part of the parking issue how many cars are being serviced on a daily day-to-day basis? I know we're looking at it as a car dealership selling the cars, but also how many cars are being serviced there daily, and are they being dropped off hours? I just want to understand the entire flow of traffic that's going to this.
As far as the flow of traffic, of service traffic, it would be very far from the abutters because it's limited only to off Route 9. You can pull in the service drive, and then during dealership hours, the cars would be pulled into the service shop. But if somebody drops the car off hours, there's a key drop box that would sit in front of the service drive, and that car would sit in the customer parking until the next morning when an employee comes in. So it wouldn't affect the noise or light to the neighbors at the back.
Do you know how many cars, because you just said that this is the only Hyundai in the area, so if I own a Hyundai and I live in Framingham, am I going to come to this location for service?
I don't, but I can get that information for you.
Okay.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, couple questions. The fueling station, can you just point down to where that is? When are cars usually being fueled and filled? What times? Is that during business hours or would it be?
During business hours, yes.
Then the other question I had was there seems to be a little contradiction about the upper parking deck. Is it or is it not being used by employees?
As of now, we're anticipating it would be used by employees.
Thank you.
All right, I have a few questions as well. The dumpster area, I know 150 feet sounds like a lot, but it's really not, especially during the winter. I think what we've talked about with a wall or a wooden fence would be really good for soundproofing, but I think there needs to be more landscaping there, if nothing else.
I'm sorry, there needs to be more what?
Landscaping.
Okay.
I don't think a couple Norway spruce are going to do the job to shield dumpsters hitting the ground whenever a garbage truck comes and all that associated noise. Norway spruces, this is kind of a new topic. We were actually just talking about it today. Spruces are generally not resistant to climate change. So what's the plan for these Norway spruces should the temperatures change in the next 10, 15 years and they die? Are we going to replace the trees? Are we going to just leave the stumps there? What's the plan?
I can tell you that a lot of the towns now are saying that landscape plantings as a condition they're putting in, if they die, that they have to be replaced with similar originally permitted trees.
In perpetuity?
In perpetuity. That's what I'm finding more and more.
Okay.
My clients don't always like it, but that's what's going in.
Yeah.
And it's actually a good idea because that way the neighbors know that if a plant goes in that's not disease resistant or climate resistant, or if it just naturally dies, that all of a sudden they're going to be looking at all these lights and everything else.
I think that's something we should consider moving forward. The back area, I know by the filling station is just sod. And then over there is a, what was it? Type 4 conservation shade seed mix. Is there any pollinator plantings or seeding going to happen on site?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the end of that. Is there?
Any pollinator plantings or seeding happening on site? Is the conservation mix a pollinator-friendly seeding?
I would have to check that. The level 4 or the type 4 conservation seed mix that's planted in there was specifically requested by Natural Heritage.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, I know that butts up against an NHESP site.
Yeah.
But elsewhere on site where it's just loam and seed, can we work in some pollinator-friendly seed mixes?
Sure. As long as they aren't opposed to it. Yep.
Are there any solar canopies proposed for the parking areas?
Not at this time.
Are you amenable to that?
We're open to the discussion, but that's not something we were planning to put in this project.
I mean, it's a large parking area, and I think we need to utilize as much open space as possible for renewable energy. So that's something I think we should have a conversation about. And then the EV charging stations, did you say there was going to be 5? How many total?
There are two level 3 right now on the plan. There's a future level 3 and 2 more level 2s shown on the plan that are wired for it.
And that's just on the site. We also are proposing at least 2 currently in the service shop, plus outlets for future expansion in the shop.
Is there any plan for expansion on the site outside of the shop?
That's what the extra conduit is for. We have 2 that we're going to order and place immediately upon opening, and then we have conduit should we need to install future.
But how many spaces is that conduit going to serve?
We have 3 more?
Yeah, so that out in the front of the building, there would be a level 3 to start, and there's a future for a level 2. And over on the left side of the building, there's a level 3 to start. There's a future for a level 3, and there's a future for 2 level 2s.
Okay, I would recommend we have conduit for maybe the entire front area. I mean, Baker passed signed a bill saying gas vehicles are going to be banned in 2035. That's not too far off. So if we're going to plan this facility for more than 10 years, I think we need to think about EV charging stations in more spots. That's all I have.
Right. I had a few questions. I'll start with the location of the dumpsters and the fuel storage. What size fuel storage are we talking?
It hasn't been decided, but the maximum size would be 3,450 gallon.
Okay. So I'm just a little concerned that this is as close as you could get to the residential abutters, and I feel like with so much parking space, could we find a spot that's maybe further away from the neighbors so that the dumpsters aren't right there? I realize that it's not a food prep facility, so there probably is an odor from the dumpsters, but John made the point that there will be sound, and I'm sure there's very minimal risk with this fuel storage, but to me, if something did happen, I'd like to know that it was as far away from the neighbors, from the residential property as possible. It would seem to me like you have enough space that you could relocate this further away from the abutters. I may have missed this, but where is snow storage going to be for this? This is an awful lot of parking lot, then you've got the roof. To me, that could be an awful lot of snow, and are you planning on using parking spaces to store excess snow, or where is that going to be?
No, mostly along the westerly side parking lot, and then see where the fuel station is, those green areas before you get out to the landscape, snow could be pushed back and stacked in those areas. There's not a lot of area over on the east side of the site.
Okay, and you're confident that'll be enough?
Yeah, usually the choice is if they don't have enough, they have to remove it from the site.
Okay, well, all right, we'll see how that goes. Jim had made a point about the first entrance. I think it needs to be clearly marked, authorized vehicles only. But I am concerned if somebody turns in there, how are they going to turn around if they get to that gate and they can't turn around? Are they going to be able to pull a U-turn? Is that wide enough, or is there going to be some place they can turn around? Or are they going to have to back up towards Route 9? And I mean, they can't back onto Route 9.
You're talking just ordinarily passenger vehicles?
Let's say I'm driving down and I get
Yeah.
confused and I pull in there and I say, uh-oh, I shouldn't have come down here. I can't
Yeah.
get through the gate.
Yeah, well, you can see the decel lane coming into the site.
So that's,
So as you're coming off, now you're out of the line of traffic, but as soon as you get to that spot right there, you can see the gate right in front of you.
Right.
So at that point, you haven't driven all the way in the 50 feet.
They'll be able to make the turn and
Yeah,
get back to...
it's the main neck there is left at 30 feet wide, and it's even wider at Route 9.
Okay, as long as they can get back onto Route 9 without...
And we agree totally on the directional sign. It needs to be perfect in this case.
Okay, so along Route 9, it looks like there's existing sidewalks about halfway down the site
Correct.
that just end.
Yeah.
We talked about that. We talked about your extending that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was discussed, I think, at one of the working sessions, I believe we had here about potentially extending it. I think the letter we just got last week from the building department had said, depending on what happens with the bike trail out back, maybe it doesn't make sense for the applicant to do that and make this access out back. Maybe they can, do some horse trading, but right now it's a sidewalk that goes to nowhere, so extending it really doesn't benefit anyone other than just makes it go a little further, but.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that, if there's resources spent on the multi-purpose trail, then maybe we could, not extend that sidewalk, but I'm not sure I'm happy with a sidewalk going nowhere, so we need to work on a solution
Okay.
for pedestrians as well as cars. You answered my question about whether the park, types of foliage. All right, I think that's everything I had. Jim, you have another question?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, and thank you for the questions from the board because they've made me have some more questions. I know you guys are going to love this. Can you show me the zoning table? You must have it on your proposed conditions plan.
I don't know that we have it on these renderings specifically, probably not. It's on the site plans.
So can you tell me what the percentage of open space is on the site?
60%.
Okay, probably right at 60, right?
Excuse me?
Probably very close to 60.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
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 Okay. So this site is in New England, and we do have different design allowances that are necessary for snow that you probably don't have down in Florida. And the issue that was brought up by the board about the dumpsters and the gas fueling station, it is really key that that location is so close to a residential abutter. I'd like to see an alternative location. And I'd like to see the snow storage areas called out because you can't store snow on newly planted, particularly conifers, because they spread. You're not going to have the area to store snow. I think you're going to need to come up with a better snow storage plan than that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, back to the sidewalk to nowhere. If you build the bike trail, you wouldn't need to have a sidewalk to nowhere. But in the interim, if you're not going to build the bike trail, you do need to have pedestrian access. The whole reason that CarMax has that sidewalk is because they provided for pedestrian access.
Anything else, Jim?
Yeah, thank you.
I just had one more comment on something you said, Marshall. You had said that there was some reluctance by the prior owner to provide the trail easement. So just as a history, and I don't know if you were involved, but when CarMax came in for approval, the prior owner of this property indicated that they would give the town an easement out to park. And I just, if that's not going to happen, I'd like an explanation in writing. So
I understand, Mark, and I don't disagree with you. You may want to talk to Jim. I don't want to talk about individuals, but Jim, I believe you're the one who told me that there was a decision made by a prior owner of one of these properties that he was not going to allow it to happen.
No, that didn't come from me. He didn't like it, but there was no decision
I may be
made.
wrong on that. I thought I heard that from you, and I know I heard it from him, but.
So I was probably the only one on the board at the time, but I distinctly asked the owner if they would provide that easement, and indicated that they would.
We had no
So-
problems with CarMax. I wasn't talking
Well,
about.
I kind of expect that commitment to be honored in this case.
You say that commitment, you mean of the person who owned this property?
Well, I think that the easement out to Park Street, I've always had an expectation since CarMax was developed, and we as a board were told, and I can probably find the minutes where that was on record, where that owner said that they would provide an easement out to Park Street along the
My memory
existing
may
trolley.
be incorrect, Mark, and I don't want to talk individuals' names. I'd be happy.
Well, I'm trying to avoid that as well, but I think we.
I don't know if you intend to set up a work session on something like this where we get some representatives from the town to sit with us, where we can maybe have an open discussion and talk about,
Yeah. So since.
might be helpful.
Yeah, I would, since this would, yeah, I think that a work session would be beneficial, at least on the B-Walt and then possibly on the lighting and privacy issues, once you've had a chance to meet with the abutters.
I think that would be a good idea. I think it would be a good idea if we, or even we with a member or two of the planning board, could meet with the abutters. I'm sure that they have lots of questions. I remember questions they had with CarMax, and we're more than willing to meet with them and listen to them. My client wants to be a good neighbor. So we do intend to meet with them. I know that they will ask their questions tonight, and we expect it, and I have told them based on my experience what I think the issues will be. So I think my client's aware of it. And I think it would be a good idea for us to meet with them as a group also, potentially outside of the planning board public hearing. And if the planning board members individually, up to 2, I guess, wanted to join us, that would be fine.
All right. All right, so if there's nothing else from the board, this is a public hearing. I'm going to ask you, if you wish to ask a question or say anything, please raise your hand. When I recognize you, state your name and address. And for the interest of time, if you feel like your question has already been addressed, if we could try to avoid making the same point 5 times. Again, if you feel it's important enough to get up, I'll certainly recognize you. But we're going to continue this hearing to a future hearing as well. The applicants offered to have a meeting with the abutters to address your concerns outside of this hearing as well. So does anybody from the public wish to speak on this? Before we start, I should recognize, I do have a letter. I will read this into the record. It's from Wayne Webster, chairperson of the Board of Trustees of the Villages at Walker Meadow, dated August 2nd, 2022. Marshall, do you have a copy of this yet? Okay. Do we have an extra copy for Marshall? All right. I'll read it into the record and you'll get it.
Thank you.
Okay. Dear members of the Westborough Planning Board, the Villages at Walker Meadow is the only residential direct abutter of the subject development. As such, we have several concerns regarding the size and scope of the planned Hyundai auto dealership and its impact on the residents of Walker Meadow. Background. The Villages at Walker Meadow is a condominium development of 50 duplex Cape Cod-style homes covering almost 49 acres, of which 80% of the land is open. The Villages at Walker Meadow was built on the site of the Walker Dairy Farm, and as such, it maintains the meadows, wetlands, and many of the features of the former dairy farm, including the farmer's stone pasture walls and cow paths. This idyllic neighborhood of 100 residences is a 55-plus condominium community. We realize the developer has the right to develop the property, but having a business of this size as a direct abutter leaves the homeowners with concerns we believe can be addressed as a part of this review process. To maintain our quality of life, we ask the planning board and the developer to address the following issues: lighting around the building, the property, and on the roof decks. We wish to understand how the plant buffers will shield Walker Meadow from the headlights of autos moving about the lot after dark. We also wish to understand how the roof deck parking is organized so that the lights from cars and from the decks are not going to impact Walker Meadow. The trees at the property line should be of sufficient height and type to effectively shield Walker Meadow from light and noise pollution. We believe due to the topography of lots at 180, 182 at Turnpike Road, a 20-foot tree would be the most desirable. With the businesses currently bordering Walker Meadow, we experience noticeable and sometimes significant noise pollution from trash, waste pickup, and deliveries all hours of the day and night. Is it possible to condition the permitting so that these noise-producing elements will be restricted to after 7 a.m. and no later than dusk? We note with interest a car wash is designed for the back of the building, and if this is a traditional car wash, we believe this may produce significant noise. Are you able to provide decibel readings at the site of the car wash and then at the Walker Meadow property line? Can the noise decibels from any operation at the exterior walls of the building be limited as a condition of the permitting? Although an indirect issue, in reviewing the plans, it appears the area for moving a fire apparatus through the property is quite limited. Has the fire department provided comments on the proposal? Hazardous waste storage at the rear of the site. There is a concern that the storage of spent oil and other materials, batteries, tires, etc., may have a negative impact on Walker Meadow and the wetlands areas bordering our properties. What is being done to ensure safe storage? The walking bike path is a project the town has been working on for some time. Will this development have any impact on finishing the bike path project between Park Street and East Main Street? The detention area within Walker Meadow empties into the same area that the development is planning to use. We wish to receive assurances that there will be no impact on our drainage outfall into the vegetated wetlands. And this is signed by 44 members, 44 residents of Walker Meadow. So I realize you just got this tonight. If you're not ready to answer some of these questions, we can defer to the continuation, but feel free to address any at this time that you want, and then we'll go to the public questions.
I just spoke to Ashley, and we'll scan. I'm sorry, I apologize. This is the first time we've seen this, and we will circulate this to both the engineer and to the applicant and myself. And many of these issues are issues we already knew about. The lighting, the trees, the concern about the trash. The detention area is something that's engineering, and we've heard some issues tonight that are similar from the board as to what the residents are saying, and that they are in favor of the bike path. That is helpful so that we don't have a battle on that issue. We appreciate this, and we're happy to talk to them and the applicant. This is obviously going to require additional time and hearings, so we would like to meet with representatives of Walker Meadow, as many as they want. We can go there, or they can come to an office, or we could make arrangements with the town to come to a room like this, whatever they would like to do. And we obviously have to get back to the planning board with some issues, and hopefully we'll have a working group where we can discuss some of the issues as well. I think that will be productive for everybody to move this forward. Okay?
Okay, that being said, we've heard a lot of questions tonight. We don't have the answers to all of them, so if anybody here has more questions, again, please state your name and address for the record. And if you want to, come use a mic, or else just... I can hear you fine.
How many parking spaces are on top of the building? The question is it all possible and feasible to full lighting?
Okay, so there's approximately 100 spaces on top of the building, and the applicant has already indicated that they are working with a lighting consultant to explore alternative lighting options, and we don't have an answer on what that would be yet, but we have asked them to consider alternative lighting besides pole lighting. Sir. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. If you could just come up and, yeah, it might be best to use the mic if you don't mind. So. Oh, that's not. Well, just speak up then and we can hear you now.
My name is Anand Lele. I live at 7 Lennox Way in Westborough.
Great, thanks, Jim.
That's better now. Live at 7 Lennox Way, Westborough. And I just want to talk and try to understand the whole lighting scheme of the second deck as well as the third deck. My understanding was there is going to be a knee wall, at least on the third deck, the roof deck, and the lighting will be recessed lighting on the perimeter of the building. Yep. That doesn't solve the problem of the interior, and we talked about it. There will be some alternate solutions studied. Let's talk about the second floor. Is there a shield of a wall on the Walker Meadow side between the second deck and the third deck? Is there a wall? Is there a knee wall? Just recessed lighting the perimeter of the second deck. And what about the interior spaces of the second deck? How are they lit? Are we shielded from that light with a wall, floor to ceiling? And we don't then care about what is inside. But we haven't even talked about the interior space of the second deck. How is that lit? How is that floor lit?
Okay, so when you say shielded, there is a zoning requirement that there can be no light spilling. So, you know, that has to be satisfied. So no light can come off of the edge of the property line, but you may be able to look out your window and see some of the lights. We're hoping to find a solution where that won't happen.
Yeah, but between the second floor and the third floor.
Right. I think that Pete brought that up, that there was just cables.
Yeah.
I think at least on the Walker Meadows side, we'd like to have some kind of solid.
Second to third floor.
It doesn't have to be concrete, but something other than cables that the lights can't shine through, so that when people.
I don't think the cables would work. There has to be some kind of a knee wall of some sort.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
We understand the issue.
Yeah.
We have already talked with the applicant about it. I believe it was earlier this week. As Ashley said, they have sent it out to their lighting designer, and I think we'll have more information by the next time we're here.
Okay.
And we appreciate that everybody came out, and we know it's a hardship for this many people to come out. I'm sorry?
Speak in the microphone, it's tough.
Speak in the microphone.
Okay. I'm saying we appreciate that all these people came out, and we'll try to get individual answers to their questions, but if the board is willing and if the residents are willing, we're also willing to have a meeting if there is a room there that we could meet, or if the town would provide a room where because I know you have other matters tonight, and I don't know how long you want this to go.
I appreciate that, Marshall, and we are going to set up a separate meeting with anybody from Walker Meadow that wants to attend. And so we'll distribute that. But if you have further questions, I'm not going to discourage you from asking those tonight.
No, I don't have any further questions, but I really certainly feel that that's a really, really important issue, lighting.
We recognize that as a...
Top deck is really a bugaboo here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Are there any further questions? Sir.
Ken Pereira, 9 Deerfield Way. Just a quickie. Security. Do you normally have, I assume, cameras? And how about the dog?
That answer was yes, just for the record.
No dog. A night watchman.
Typically, no. Typically just cameras.
I'm sorry?
Typically just cameras. We usually don't have a security company unless there is a safety issue.
Well, what happens when alarms go off in cars due to thunderstorms or wind or break-ins or what?
I'll have to get you the answer to that. I don't have that answer.
Well, I'm just, we're talking about noise issues, and this is another one that we need to consider, I think. Thank you.
Okay, point well taken. Anyone else? Man?
Mind just come to the microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I need to bring it way down. Okay, I'm Paula Young, 11 Stagecoach Circle, and it's not in Walker Meadow, it's across the street, the 12 condos. So my question is, a lot of times when I'm going from 135 to Route 9 West, the large trucks that are carrying 6 or 8 cars are in the jug handle, and they can't make it. So they have to back up, and people have to sometimes back up so that they can make that wide turn. And that happens like 2 or 3 times a week for me. So I don't know if, I see that as a problem.
Is that on Park Street or on Route 9?
It's the bridge, there's like a underpass. That's where I'm talking about, right there.
Okay, so you're talking about Milk Street, where across from, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's a big project, but I don't think we're going to get them to fix that. No, I mean, I don't mean to laugh because I completely understand what you're saying. They have to wait there a long time before there's even an opening to pull out onto Route 9, right? I mean, that's...
Right, well, and it doesn't seem like they can swing wide enough to get into there. But I was wondering, for them, how will their trucks be coming in? Will they be coming in Route 9 to 135, or?
Yeah, I'm assuming that most of them will be coming off of 495 from the Mass Turnpike. So how are they going to double back to this side? That's a good question.
There are a lot of dealerships on Route 9 on both sides. I can't answer the questions of how they come, but I know as you drive up and down near, Long Meadow Road, or there were 2-car dealerships there, and as we go further down, of course, you go all the way to what used to be Duddy's, who is it now? Herb Chambers, I think it is. So there are on that side of the road, but no matter which side of the road it is, the car carriers, if they come off of 495, are going to have to come down and do one of the intersections and come back, or if they make a delivery, if it's on the westbound side of Route 9, and they're going to have to go back to 495, they're going to have the same issue. So this is not going to be anything new compared to any other dealership.
Yeah, I think I'd want to discourage them using the 135 Milk Street interchange to double back. I'd rather have them go down to the Indian Meadows light and pull a U-turn if they can. But I mean, that interchange is not designed for large trucks. It's a difficult interchange. A large truck ends up backing up traffic behind it. I don't know if that's something we can regulate as part of this.
I can only tell you that from representing other auto dealerships, I'll use Shrewsbury as an example where the road seems to be, in representing other dealerships in other towns, they have similar issues, and I don't know how they deal with it. And for example, at I'll use again a Subaru dealership that's just before where Spags used to be. They would go down and they would somehow have to turn around either to get there or to get back from there. And it's a challenge at virtually every place on Route 9. So we can request it, but they don't necessarily control the car carriers that come there. Many of them, I've learned over time, are independent. Some are exclusively to particular dealerships, but most are independent. I don't know, we can talk with the applicant and see who they use, but this is going to be their first time up in Massachusetts, so I don't know if they know yet who they're going to use. So we can make requests, but I don't know that we will be able to make it mandatory. I'd like to, but I just can't promise that.
Miss,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. And one more thing. So if I'm coming eastbound on Route 9 and I want to take a right onto Park Street, it's difficult. People are speeding up because you're trying to get to the top of the hill. It's a 55-mile-per-hour speed. I'm wondering if that's going to be too much. To have people.
That's not under our control, though. That's the state.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to be able to change that.
Right, because if this is, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand. Maybe a right turn lane, but I'm not sure that
Right. Okay.
we can ask the applicant to do that, Jim.
Yeah, no one's accessing this site from Park Street. I know what you're talking about. I'm well aware of the speed of traffic and coming over the hill particularly. It is a concern, but this project adds no traffic to Park Street. So the car carriers are not going to be rear-ended because they're not going to turn onto Park Street. And your earlier point about the interchange at Milk Street, it's been an issue forever. And that interchange is under the authority of the Mass DOT, the Mass Department of Transportation, which is the state. The town does not own that interchange. We have, over the years, reached out to the District 3 office in Worcester to fix that interchange. They've acquired the additional right-of-way necessary, and they've even drawn plans, but they've never enacted the plans. It's all money.
Thank you.
Sir.
Wayne Webster, 3 Essex Way. Welcome to the neighborhood. Two things. Of course, at Walker Meadow, we're concerned about the drainage and everything that we've talked about, so we won't bring that up again. And this process is a very healthy one that I think will reach a good conclusion for both sides. I mean, if we had our preferences, we would say lose the top floor of the parking area, just have one, but I suspect that doesn't work for you. The other thing is we look at Route 9, and really would, and I know it's a state issue how wide the highway is and all of that. I would really say get on Route 9, come over that hill, and because we do it all the time. The young lady we were just talking about coming on Park Street. The issue isn't getting on Park Street. The issue is topping that hill. You don't see that driveway. And if you've got trucks pulling in there and they're slowly pulling in, they see the light at Lyman and nothing else. And people start doing this on Route 9 at that moment. They start moving all over the place. I pull out on Park Street all the time, and people are moving constantly. Over that hill, 55 miles an hour, there's a real problem. I don't know what you could do on your property to widen so that people could really move off the highway and be a little safer for those crazy people that are coming over the highway at 65 miles an hour. That's something you may want to look at. For the Walker Meadow side, intriguing comment about putting the fence on our side versus the other side. We are open to a discussion with you. We have a clubhouse with a great room, not this big, but we do have a great room, and you would be welcome to come there and meet us. And I know a lot of our residents would come in. We had a meeting last Tuesday, more than 40 people showed up just to discuss it. We do understand that you have a right to build the dealership. We're not fighting that. I am concerned about the question you asked, Ms. Norris, about numbers of employees that didn't seem to get answered. And I'd like to think that someone planning a development of this size would have sort of a min-max, sort of an idea. They'd have a projection about how many employees they're going to have because they have a sense for how successful they're going to be. And if there was any concern about how successful you're going to be, I certainly don't want to see an empty car lot on the other side of us, only because then we're all going to be here again trying to figure out what do we do with this space. And there's going to be all kinds of neat ideas from dance studios and wrestling sites and all kinds of things that could be much worse than what you're doing. So I certainly would like to know how many employees they're projecting, because that's going to tell us how much success they're projecting for themselves.
Okay.
So,
and I think they said that they would come back to us with a better answer on that, but I don't know that they are ready to address that. I mean, have you uncovered an answer in the last 45 minutes?
The architect knows exactly how many employees are in every space, and that's how the building was designed, but unfortunately, they're not here tonight. So we can't address that, but it's been determined, and Ashley will get the exact numbers for you.
okay, that would be great. Thank you.
And if I may, to the board, Ashley is from facilities, so she's going to be the project manager for this site, and she is here. When they came up last time to meet with selectmen, did you meet with Conservation Commission? Okay, to meet with the selectmen, somebody came up both from operations and from facilities. So we'll get the answers, and we'll be able to provide them.
So again, I'm not going to discourage people from asking more questions, but we have a commitment from the applicant to meet with the abutters outside of this hearing. We'll have something at Walker Meadow. If you're not a resident of Walker Meadow, I would like to extend an invitation to you on behalf of the applicant, because I realize not everyone here might be a resident there, but I certainly want to include any abutter that is interested in this discussion. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it now, but I think we have a lot of open questions, and we're going to have a chance to ask more. So it's not, we don't have to get them all out tonight, but certainly if you feel like you have something new, please speak up. Lee. Leah.
Lydia Goldblatt. I work for Penta Communications, Blue Ocean. I'm here representing them tonight. Just two quick questions. One is, you had brought up 180 Turnpike Road is on septic. 182 is on town sewer. Are all buildings going to be on sewer, town sewer? Okay. And the construction of that will be obviously in that area. It's not going to go down behind Walker Meadows. The construction of the new sewer to extend the sewer?
No, the building on the east side, which is 180, is already connected to the sewer.
Oh, okay, so they'll just extend it out.
It's a very short run from the back of the building to connect into the sewer, so that sewer that's there is a force main. It'll be replaced with a new service by gravity. So it's just from the back of the building right to where the arrow, right there, and you're done. So it doesn't cross the rail bed.
Right, and the trolley, the former trolley.
Correct.
And the other question is, I'm sure, I'm a little bit confused, I don't know if anyone else is out in the audience, about the trail going down to Park Street behind Penta and behind Walker Meadows. Would there ever be an instance where there would be through traffic? I spoke to Jim about this today. Thank you for your time, Jim. From Park Street behind, or is it just going to be, bicycles and walkers? Has that ever been totally established?
It wouldn't be accessible for vehicles.
It would not be accessible to
motorized vehicles allowed would be like a wheelchair.
Right. And I just wanted to get that out on the table, because I remember, like Mark did.
I don't think horses are allowed either.
Okay,
no,
I don't
quote
think
me on that. All right.
Actually, the question of horses came up during CarMax, and we said no, and there would not be motorized trail bikes because of the noise they create. So we're hoping that the town, who works with the trail committee, will make sure that it's for walkers, joggers, and bikes.
Right.
Bicycles.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record, not only for Penta, but for Walker Meadow. Thank you.
And maybe unicycles.
All right, any further questions? All right, we've spent quite a bit of time on this, and I really appreciate everyone coming down, because we've uncovered several good points that the board didn't think of. We have several open issues. At I will leave it to Marshall to coordinate with the abutters, and please make sure to include anybody that, can we get, Marshall, a list of attendees tonight? Is that
We have a
allowable?
list of attendees.
We have
on
a
the back.
sign-in sheet. Can we get Marshall a copy of that so
Sure.
he understands who was here?
I've got Wayne's business card, and
Okay.
and he's got mine, so we're going to talk and set.
No, I understand, but there was at least one person here who wasn't in Walker Meadow, so I just want to make sure that they're invited to that session as well. But, you know,
And if the board does want to have a representative or
yeah,
more than one.
that was my next point, is does anybody from the board want to volunteer to participate in that? Okay, Pete will do it. If you could just include him on that, and once you've had that meeting, you can report back to us.
Could you just have Kristen send me your contact information so that I can let you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
And also, I don't know if you want to set up a working committee so that we can talk about some of the sensitive issues on this.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some other issues. Do you want to set that up now or after the meeting with the abutters?
I think it would be best to set it up after the meeting with the abutter, but I don't know if you want to choose or get volunteers for the working group.
Are you willing to do that, Pete? Because I think Pete will,
Okay.
we can have two members of the board. All right, so I will participate in that work session as well.
We're not having the meeting yet. You can decide.
Well, you know, I'm deeply interested in the success of the B-Walt, so
As
I would
is
like to
Jim.
participate in that.
Mark, I would love to attend some meetings, but not all, so maybe we can switch.
Well,
back.
do you want to attend the Walker Meadow meeting with Pete?
I could do that, or as I said, you and I can switch off on the other
Yeah.
one. I know B-Wald is your thing, but I have some other concerns.
Well, it's not just my thing, but
Oh,
I,
but I mean, it's a particular concern.
hopefully the town's thing. So, all right. Anyway, let's move this forward. Do we have a motion?
And I did give you the letter.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a letter from the applicant requesting a continuance. I don't think I need to read it into the record, but just for
your next
formality, we're, to the members of the planning board, we're scheduled for a public hearing for a site plan review,
Do this one first.
8182 Turnpike Road on August 9th. On behalf of the applicant, I respectfully request that the public hearing be continued until the planning board meeting on August 23rd. Very truly yours, Marshall Gould. So Marshall, if we're not ready to proceed on the 23rd, I'll need another request for another continuance, okay?
Sure.
I think you missed your other meeting, right? All right, go ahead.
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application of 180-182 Turnpike Road to Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022 at 6:30 PM as requested by the applicant.
Okay,
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Discussion. I need to have you approve the consulting contract from Ty and Bond first. That was the first motion that you had.
Oh, so you wanted that done first?
During the public hearing, it needs to be
Okay,
done.
sorry.
Yep.
All right. I move that the planning board approve the peer review contract for Ty and Bond dated July 26, 2022 for an amount not to exceed $10,000 for the engineering review of 180 and 182 Turnpike Road.
Second.
Any discussion of that motion?
Thank you.
All those in favor of approving the peer review contract? That is 5-0 in favor. And then we turn to the original motion for continuance.
I move that the planning board continue
Don't need to read it, it's an open motion. So, any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of continuance? That's 5-0 in favor. So don't all show up on August 23rd unless you're sure we may just end up continuing it if we don't have a lot of these details and answers for you. Check in with us first, or at least with Wayne. We'll let him, kind of disseminate information to everybody as to whether or not we're going to have anything productive for the 23rd. It may be continued. We actually have a third meeting in August scheduled for the 30th. Hopefully we can have answers by that time. Okay? All right. We do have more business, so if I could ask you, any conversations, please try to keep it down, take it out to the hallway or, the front, or, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark.
Can you hand me that continuance?
You're welcome.
Hi, John.
There it is. Thank you.
Oops. Yeah. Mark.
The daylight trail.
I figured
Yeah.
I would like to go to the work session.
Yeah, I can go to the open meeting myself. I'll be fine.
Yes, but call me during the
Yeah,
office
I'd
because
really
they're
like
still
to
in
do the work
session.
session.
We'll just make that clear to Jim. Actually, just tell Kristen too, if she'll keep track. She'll keep track.
Kristen? Yeah, Mark and I will do the work session, and Pete will do...
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay,
You're welcome.
again, please, we have more business. If you guys could just, please, take all conversations outside.
I know.
Oh, yeah, we miss you.
Gets to call.
Yeah, we miss you there. Yeah, good to see you. All right, next item on our agenda is a continuation of the public hearing for the site plan application for 190 212 Oak Street. I have a request from the applicant to continue this hearing. I will read that into the record. It's addressed to Jim Robbins, Town Planner, dated August 8th. We are requesting a continuance for our Hana Place meeting to be held on August 9th, 2022. We are working on the traffic study and need more time to complete it. Please schedule us for your next planning board meeting. We also request the planning board that we would like a working meeting to discuss the options we were presented with in our commercial piece last informal meeting regarding Hana Place versus Village Commons commercial piece. We need clarity so we can make informed decisions. Okay. I'll entertain a motion on the continuance.
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application for 190-212 Oak Street to Tuesday, August 23rd at 6:30 p.m. as requested by the applicant.
I second that.
Hazel, can you say that again a little louder into the microphone?
And then a second, and no need for reiteration, John. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
All those in favor of continuance, that's 5-0. Jim, can you set up, you or Kristen set up a follow-up meeting regarding Village Commons and Hana Place? We do have an outstanding issue.
Let me close.
I guess we're going to discuss that under Village Commons. So the next item on the agenda is an update on Village Commons 1 Gleason Street, an established construction schedule, and a discussion of 16 Dania Drive. Jim, I'll let you start.
I don't have a lot to report on this, Mr. Chairman. I will say that since our last meeting, Hazel and I did visit the project site and looked at the 4 units that have not yet received COs. I am going to do a design review board inspection of those 4 units this week. And I spoke with the developer yesterday and told him that I would not do that inspection unless the landscape was installed, and he assured me that the landscape was installed. It was not installed when Hazel and I were out there. I will go and look on my way in tomorrow morning because I can come by that site. And if it is not installed, I will report back to you and let him know that I'm not going to sign off on the design review. But even if everything's complete, he still needs to receive CO from the building commissioner. And the approval had a project schedule that required the next unit that's occupied to be an affordable unit. That is what is holding up the gentleman that came in to our last meeting and pleaded to allow his market rate unit to be occupied out of order. So this is truly at the performance of the developer. I can't put it any other way, plainly. He needs to complete his work according to the schedule. He also offered to provide an updated schedule, which I spoke to him about 2 weeks ago, and he said he would do it, and I have never received anything, so.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this that I find very difficult to swallow is the fact that he has not finished the affordable unit. He doesn't have to sell it. He doesn't have somebody, he needs a CO on it. This is not that difficult to finish. He's been stalling us for months on this at this point. I feel badly about the person I think it's 16, has been unable to get in there. But if we let him continue on in this same way, I mean, the house is up, interiorly it's done. I don't think it needs that much more work to get his CO on it.
Right.
And I think if we don't start to hold his feet to the fire on these things, we're going to be back where we were before. And so I just feel, I guess I've reached kind of the end of my rope in the fact that he has been unable or has chosen not to perform according to the site plan. He knew what the regulations were from the beginning on this, and we've had nothing but stalling and problems with it all the way along. And we're just not, I don't see, unless we finally, make a decision that he needs to get this unit finished.
So, Jim, at what point, since he is not performing the way the special permit was written, I mean, at what point can we entertain reopening the special permit or rescinding it?
So you'd have to have good cause to do that. One of the good causes would be that he's not conformed to the schedule, and you choose then to either rescind his approval or take his performance bond and complete the items he's not completed, which would not be the houses, but it would be the common landscape, any of the infrastructure, any of the utilities, any of the things that would be in common, or the public elements of the project. And I'm not sure that you want to do that. I would not want to step into his shoes, but you might rescind his approval. So what would that do? That would make it more difficult for anybody who has purchased a home to get a CO, because once you rescind the approval, the COs stop. So I kind of think you're in a bad position. We have to find a way to incent him to complete his project.
What's the other option?
The two options are you take the performance bond and complete the work, or you rescind the approval, which stops the COs.
Yeah, but the performance bond, it doesn't do us any good, because what we're concerned about is the CO on the house that he cannot seem to finish. That's where the problem is.
And if we take that approach, there's also, every house there has punch list items that he hasn't come back to complete,
Mm-hmm.
So it's, there's 16 who's outstanding, who can't get in, but then there's the rest that have punch list items that he's supposed to finish up.
Right.
If we go with the second route, those punch list items will never get finished.
Yeah. So at least the board did a smart thing by requiring the two affordable units to be occupied or receive a CO.
Receive the CO,
prior
which is
to the
different.
final
Right.
market rate unit. Because the way this development has proceeded, the developer is focused only on the units that make him the most money and have left the affordable units to the very end of the project, which is bad, because it then flies in the face of the whole idea of creating an affordable community where the units all look alike and everybody's treated the same. He's keeping those people living in the affordable units to the very end, and that leaves a stigma on those units. So the requirement that the road remain private is a good thing, but it's a bad thing because we can't finish it for the homeowners. It's a good thing because he hasn't built the road to the specifications yet that were on the approved plan. So it's such a small project, and you're at the very end of the project now. It's just going to be difficult to get it finished.
So, so my problem is I really, I really have a lot of sympathy for this buyer. And as much as I want the landscaping to be done, you know, I don't want to hold these people up anymore.
Yeah, but it's not the landscaping mark, it's getting all he has to do is get the CO on the affordable unit. That's all he has to do. If he gets the CO on the affordable unit, finishes that, then he can close on this gentleman's property.
Yeah, but as I understand it, the landscape is not installed, and
But it's issues that are internal to the unit, Mark, as well. Even if he gets the landscape done, that's only the design reviews sign off.
But that's the affordable unit.
Yes, but there's
the unit that
he won't get the CO from the building commissioner either, because the items inside
it's the
home
inside
are incomplete.
The inside of which unit?
The affordables.
Okay, but what about the unit that that buyer is waiting for? Is that ready for CO? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know.
The thing is that if really all he has to do, as far as I'm concerned at this particular time, is to get the CO on the affordable unit. If he does that, then as far as the landscaping goes and those other things, then we
Hazel,
can move forward on the performance bond.
Hazel, how long have we been asking him to do that?
Well,
2 months now? Are we going to make that buyer wait another 2 months?
I mean, you know, at this point, and
No, I mean,
I don't know.
honestly, this is a future neighbor. They may have kids. I don't know their personal life, but I can't imagine living in a motel for 2 more months when you've already probably been in there for 2 months.
Yeah.
I think at
he's
some
not
point
gonna
we have
finish
to consider the buyer's well-being, and I mean, this is a future taxpayer. My feeling is we let them move in. We instructed the building commissioner to give them a CFO. I know I may be alone in that. I don't know.
Does that mean that the affordable units won't be constructed then?
No,
it just
we
means they
still
won't
have a market
finish.
rate at the end.
Not going to finish the affordable
Still has
unit,
more
is
market
what's gonna
rates
happen.
that.
Right, but if we give him the CO for the market rate,
Just one. You have one market rate unit.
if we give him,
After
so,
this, right.
so the person who's waiting to move in is the market rate, correct?
There's one more after that.
2 market rates.
Yes.
So 2 market rates and 2 affordable units.
Right.
Yeah, there are 4 units.
So if he gets the CO for the market rate, will he be able to get the CO for the second market rate?
No,
Until the affordables are complete?
correct.
Not unless
And
we
is there a
made the
buyer
same.
waiting for the second market rate?
That's
Probably.
unknown, but more than likely, based on practice, there's probably a buyer outstanding.
I mean, I understand it's unfortunate that the market rate buyer is waiting, and I want them to be settled. But I mean, the 2 affordable units are also potential neighbors and potential taxpayers that potentially have kids.
Haven't even gone to lottery yet.
I understand, but that's 2 families that might not have a home that we're, waiting on. So yes, there's one family that's waiting, and that's unfortunate. I think it falls on the developer to fix that. But we also have to consider the potential other families out there that might be waiting. And if those 2 affordable units never get built, then that's 2 families that aren't going to be able to move into town.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I just think because of mortgage contingencies and they've been outstanding for 18 months, I'm with Mark. I honestly think these people need to be in their house. They've been put out for extreme.
And the rates have gone up. They may have a rate lock that's.
I agree, and I think they need to move in. So I guess maybe, I don't know, I don't even know if I have a vote on this.
Do we even have the authority to get a CO?
Yeah, we can instruct the building commissioner.
Well, only if it's finished. I mean,
Well,
you
and
know.
then what are the
I don't
outstanding
think we've
items on
finished
the
them.
inside that haven't been done?
Of that buyer's unit, I mean,
Well, I'm just, you don't know, you know what I mean? If it's something
I don't know, that's a
electrical.
great point too, like, we can't just
If it's
tell the
not
building
safe.
commissioner to give him a C of O, but we can tell them not to hold up, not to delay a C of O for the
Yeah.
affordable unit.
Have we done this before as a town?
No.
I just don't want to set a bad precedent moving forward.
The thing that I would like to know, and I think is information that would be very valuable for this board, is to ask the building department to go into the affordable unit and tell us what needs to be done for them to get the CO.
Okay, the last I knew, the electric wasn't even installed. So that's pretty significant.
So let me give you background on this. This developer did a 40B project, which the planning board had no authority over. And the performance on that was substandard. The road, I don't even think is its final code, and that was done, the last unit sold in there almost 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, the road
So
is
that
not
was the
finished.
reason why we put this, caveat in. So we can draw a line, and maybe we need to do that with this developer, at the expense of this buyer, right? But to me, I don't know, I want to be sympathetic to the buyer, but I also understand the need to make this developer toe the line, because he just keeps
I think we need
cutting
to,
corners and, not performing the way it should be done.
I agree
The way the special permit was written, that's just. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I agree with Hazel. I think we need to have the building department tell us what's left in both those units that needs to get done before, because I agree, if we can push through a CO for that, for 16, and there's not much that's left that needs to get done, fine. And then we can do whatever recourse that needs to be, that, we think is, appropriate. But until then, it's hard to say what we're doing.
Why don't we wait? I suggest therefore we wait 2 weeks, which is our next meeting. Is 2 weeks from now. And in the meantime, let's find out what actually needs to be done in those units to get them finished.
I agree.
I got to tell you, I do have a fear that we're going to end up back here in 3 months or 6 months with the buyer of that last market rate asking us for, to bend the rules again because this developer hasn't performed. So I don't know, I'm sympathetic, but I'm leaning at this point towards just holding him to what the special permit required.
I think also the buyers must have some type of legal recourse themselves that they can do. And although the market's shifted, it might not be in their best interest, that the property that they bought, or not that they bought, but they had under agreement or whatever, has increased in value, there's still legal recourse that they could go through.
That may all depend on what was in the original purchase and sale.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think many attorneys would have anticipated this kind of.
The problem is on these projects, he requires a working deposit. So instead of a regular deposit, which, a regular deposit, you put 5% down, but on these, you actually have to put a working deposit down, which means that money is actually going to the construction, and that's non-refundable. And so that's what he has had everyone in that community sign. And so they're all locked in because they've already put a non-refundable deposit
Yeah,
down.
but I have to say, in this situation, I cannot believe that, I would have taken him, as an attorney, I would have taken him to court on this. There's no reason why, if you look at real estate law and how it affects this kind of thing, the failure to perform within a certain amount of time based on the fact whether you've given money or not, it's still the developer would be liable to return that money because of his failure to perform. And if you look at all the circumstances involved in this particular situation, it makes no sense to me that a court would not allow them to get their money back.
So there is some motivation for the builder, not necessarily sell this unit to this buyer, based on how much the market's gone up in the last 2 years once this actually was under contract.
Well, then he could give the guys money back.
Saying
Yeah.
that's really what's going on.
Yeah.
Because the properties have gone up at least $100,000 since it was under contract.
Wow, so that makes me even more sympathetic to the buyer, that he's just trying to, he may be trying to just delay this to get them to,
Back out.
in order to sell it for more money. I don't even know what to say.
I think you should wait till next meeting and find out from the building commissioner what the items are that need to be completed in the affordable units.
Yeah, can you get the building department to go into all 4 units, the last 4, which is all that are left, and find out exactly what the state they're in and what needs to be done to complete them for the COs?
And would they have the ability to tell us how long it should take to complete those items?
Oh, I would think the building
They
department.
can probably tell you how long it's been since the building permit was granted for those items.
But to complete it, how long it should take? So we're educated on.
Sure,
finish
but
a house
I can ask him to come to the meeting. Yeah, I can ask him to
Enough
come to the
manpower,
meeting.
you can finish a house real quick.
Right. With a little incentive.
Going up immediately.
Exactly.
My question is the last one under contract? I don't know if you can ask him that, but I want to know if we're just,
Getting into another.
if we're going to do this.
He doesn't have to disclose that. Legally, wouldn't have to
No,
disclose the
that's why I'm
things that
asking,
buyer
yeah.
for it, no. And there's no way we could find out unless you know the realtor that happens to be selling it.
All right.
I'll ask the building commissioner to come to the next meeting.
All right, unless we have a motion, I think we can move on and put this on our agenda for the next meeting.
Do we need to extend this current?
There's no,
No, there's nothing, there's not a public hearing or anything.
unless somebody wants to make a motion to, give instructions to the building. I'm too undecided on this.
I think
Well, you
once we
continue.
know more, I think for next meeting, then I think we'll be able to have a game plan.
I gotta be honest, I'm completely disgusted right now.
That would be the way I would describe it.
Yeah, all right. So Jim, you'll ask the building commissioner to put
Yes.
together
Yep.
a synopsis of what's incomplete, and we'll have that developer into our next meeting. In the meantime, we're going to have a work session with that developer anyway on Oak Street, and I will impress upon him at that work session our dissatisfaction with this project as well. All right.
Just yes, you.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the peer review contract procedures. Jim, do you want to summarize this when you're ready?
Sure. Yeah, as you know, almost every one of our site plan reviews recently has been sent out for peer review. As a matter of fact, all 3 of the hearings that you have open now are under peer review. Ty and Bond is our civil engineer, site plan reviewer, and MDM is our traffic reviewer. And as a matter of fact, you just voted the Ty and Bond contract for 182 Turnpike Road. These sometimes can hold the applicant up 2 to 3 weeks before a board meeting is held to approve the scope of services for a peer review. What I would propose is that you allow myself and the town engineer to review the to review the scope of services proposed by the peer reviewer. And if acceptable to myself and the town engineer, and in some cases, the conservation agent, because there might be something regarding drainage near wetlands that's in the scope. Once that's done, if we're all in agreement, give me the authority to approve the scope so that we can get the peer review underway. Because peer reviewers, I think you asked this when Bob Michaud from MDM was here one night, if they would begin work without a signed contract, and he said no. So it could hold a project up several weeks. So I'm fine with doing it. It's easier for me if I don't, but in the interest of getting a project moving, I'd be happy to do that. As you can see, the scope of services are not very long. They're 2 to 3 pages long.
You know, what's the average cost on something like that?
$10,000.
That's what I thought. So, I mean, I have no objection to this whatsoever.
And still, the applicant reviews the scope first before we endorse it. I'm not going to endorse it unless the applicant is okay with it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like is if, and I don't know if it would be just a procedural thing, that, if it's an engineering peer review, that we get, just something for our files saying that the town engineer has reviewed it and agrees that it's ready for, signature by the town planner.
Yep.
Or if it's a conservation, have the conservation agent comment, or I guess traffic would just be up to you.
They do that anyway. I always get an email from Lisa Elaine.
Yeah, so as long as we have something on record that
Yep.
it's been reviewed by the relevant department and they
Yeah, I'm
have
fine with
agreed
that.
that it's,
How do you do it in Hopkinton, John?
So we actually just have the peer reviewer submit the scope of services. I forward it to the applicant, and then the applicant puts a deposit in, and off they go.
You go, okay.
Yeah. So I was going to say, to your point, I think if the peer reviewer just puts a signature block at the bottom of their scope of services, you and whoever else needs to sign it, that's enough.
Yep.
You get the scope and the approval.
yeah. I mean, I'm fine authorizing Jim to sign it. Again, I just want to make sure that somebody
Backs it up.
with relevant expertise has looked at the scope and agrees that it's sufficient to meet the town's needs. So,
Yeah, if it's commonplace with other towns surrounding us, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, just for a little background, our scope of services usually is the same formula. It's conformance with zoning bylaws, conformance with stormwater regulations. Trying to think what else.
Yeah, that's what Ty and Bond does. They go right through our zoning.
Yeah.
They go right through the site plan review regs. They go right through the
So it's,
stormwater requirements.
Any relevant regulations
Yep.
is, it's pretty standard. So most of them are usually generally the same or very similar.
Yeah.
yeah,
But I'd like you formally to vote to allow me to do that, because I don't want anybody to say, well, the town planner approved this and the board never saw it.
all right, does somebody want to make a motion on that?
I move that the planning board authorize the town planner as its representative to review, approve, and sign third-party peer review contracts for project applications before the board.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is 5-0 in favor of that, of allowing the town planner to approve peer review contract procedures. Peer review contracts, sorry. We have a discussion of future town meeting warrant articles. Jim, do you want to go through, it looks like we have 3.
Well, we were going to have 3. We're going to have 1, definitely. That's the library dimensional standards. So as you know, the library renovation project is going forward. They received money from the state. The town meeting will need to approve the receipt of that money. But in anticipation of the project, the town, because it's an M1 project, it's a town municipal project, has to establish the dimensional requirements, which creates a building envelope in which the work proceeds. And as you know, Westborough is unique in this. Most communities don't do it this way, but the town wants to be involved and see the plan for the project and establish the limits of work. So I've been working with the director of the library as well as their architect and engineer. We have a plan. It's going to simply be the entire lot for the library. All work must occur inside that perimeter. So very similar to what you did for the 2 town wells at the last town meeting, and what you did for the country club deck expansion, and what you did for the recreation department's project out at Lake Chauncey, you're going to need to do here. And I have the plan all prepared. I will write and advertise the legal ad tomorrow for the hearing to be August 30th. That will give the advertisement appropriate time, 15 days plus in the newspaper. And you will have someone here from the engineer and the architect to present the plan on the 30th.
Questions?
Okay. The other two that you saw in my update regard signage. The first one is to transfer the authority for signage approval from the Historic Commission to the Design Review Board in the downtown district only. Right now, the Historic Commission approves all signage if it's not associated with a building facade project. So if other Design Review Board approval is necessary, then the Design Review Board approves the signage too. But if it's only a sign, the Historic Commission does that. And the Historic Commission, I'll let Hazel speak to this if she wants, wanted to streamline the process.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I've already discussed with the Historical Commission, and we just felt this is a better way to go on this at this point. There are representatives on the DRB from the Historical Commission, so that the input is back and forth, and that was the important thing.
Yeah, so we're not going to bring it to the fall town meeting because of two other articles that have to do with signage. The first one is projecting signs. Those are placard signs that you see in downtown villages that are perpendicular to the side of a building. So if you're walking on the sidewalk, you can look up and see the sign. And if you're on the sidewalk, it's difficult to see a sign on a facade. The owners are in favor, business owners are in favor of this article. The EDC is in favor of this article, and we wanted to put this one forward with the one I just previously explained. There was a third article, and that was to remove the grandfathering for signs that had been in place for a building that was vacant. So let's say that there's a use in the downtown and the tenant leaves and the sign remains for years. Both the Historic Commission and the Design Review Board did a complete survey of the downtown. We walked all the streets that are within the zoning district that would require sign approval, and we found multiple signs on buildings where the tenant no longer occupies the space. So we felt that those signs should be removed within a reasonable period of time, whether it's the tenant that takes it with them when they leave, or it's the landlord that removes the sign after they leave. We felt they shouldn't stay in place in perpetuity. When we brought that discussion to the EDC, there were some business owners there that felt that was a hardship, that the business owner would have to remove the sign, and they wanted grandfathering to be further defined, and they wanted the town council to weigh in on that. So that gave us pause, and we're going to discuss it at the Design Review Board meeting next week. Actually, it's Thursday, this Thursday, 2 days from now. But we won't have enough time to get the articles written for town meeting. So we'll have it in the spring as opposed to the fall. The EDC wanted us to go forward with the one on the Historic Commission anyway, but I'd rather have council review them all at once as a group. It'll be a lot easier. Sometimes the voters get sick of doing things piecemeal. They say, why can't you just do this all at once? I happen to agree with that.
And I think that there are other changes that need to be made in the sign bylaw anyway. Mm-hmm. So the fact that if we get this moved over the design review, it means that they can look at the whole bylaw at once and see what other changes might be appropriate, and then bring everything in the spring on that. But the other reason was to move it over was that there is more, because the DVR is part of the planning board, there is a better mechanism for enforcement. The Historical Commission really doesn't have any enforcement powers.
All right, so we're going to table those till the spring.
Not to get into the weeds of this, but how many buildings are we talking that are vacant, that have outstanding signs?
Many.
Many?
Many. In the downtown alone, over a dozen.
Okay.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this now if it's not coming to the fall. We talked, I think, Hazel, I'm going to want to meet with you because we may have one more article, but maybe premature on that. So I want to meet with Jim and Hazel on the concept I had, and I'll get back to the board on that. I don't want to get too into that yet. The other thing I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about zoning, we had a contract out for a zoning review. Can you update me on that?
Sure, I'm happy to do. Actually, that's very timely. So as you know, we hired General Code to do a general review and a complete reorganization of the zoning bylaws. They're only making recommendations on substantive change. They're not going to propose any substantive change. They've made recommendation on probably 20 items in the zoning bylaws that should be considered by the zoning review committee going forward. So their contract is to include all zoning changes that were made through the last town meeting, through spring of '22. They've organized the new zoning bylaw. They had 76 questions that Fred and I reviewed and sent comments back to them. They're now rewriting the zoning and reorganizing the zoning. They're not changing anything substantive. They're just making it more easy to understand, fixing headings, moving sections around, renumbering, things like that. But they're not proposing the actual substantive changes to the bylaw. We expect to have that by the end of this year, to go to town meeting perhaps in the spring. So what we would do is, and we have to be really careful of this will require town council's review of the entire bylaw, is we will delete our entire zoning bylaw and we will adopt a new bylaw.
And then bring forward the sign.
Yep.
Assuming that passes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that could get pretty complex, so we'll
But we're on schedule.
yeah, good. All right. Any questions? Any minutes?
No.
Any other business? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I think that's a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Does anybody want to second that? I heard John Kelsich seconded, and like Kristen guess which John. Motion, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 5-0. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks.